Hello everyone, I'm John, your host for today's deep dive into the latest political turmoil shaking Britain's relationship with the European Union. If you haven't yet, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and join our fast-growing community for all the most pressing updates on British and global news. Now, let's get into the story that's turning heads in political circles today. Is Prime Minister Keir Starmer's grand plan for a UK-EU reset about to crumble? And what could this mean for Britain's future? Keir Starmer, who took over as Prime Minister following a landslide general election victory, has been clear from the outset about his intentions to reset the UK's relationship with the European Union. His government has been busy trying to strike deals with various individual countries, hoping to secure post-Brexit stability for Britain. But despite his best efforts, trouble seems to be brewing behind the scenes, and doubts are being cast over whether Starmer's overtures toward Europe are genuine or merely political manoeuvring. Since taking office, Starmer has been pushing the narrative of fostering a close relationship with Europe. Yet, 2 months into his tenure, reports are emerging from Brussels that cast a shadow over these claims. While his early gestures were met with tentative optimism, European officials are now expressing increasing skepticism. Some are beginning to question whether Starmer's so-called European reset is little more than window dressing. The alarm bells ringing in Brussels come from high-ranking European diplomats who have raised concerns over the sincerity of Starmer's efforts. They argue that while the Prime Minister's rhetoric may suggest a positive shift, his actions paint a very different picture. An anonymous EU insider went as far as to say that Starmer's show of unity with the EU might be a facade. While Starmer has positioned himself as a leader ready to build bridges with Europe, key decisions from his government suggest otherwise. One of the major sources of contention has been Starmer's refusal to re-enter the Erasmus programme. Erasmus, launched in 1987, enables university students to work or study in EU countries, fostering educational and cultural exchanges. Many expected Starmer's government to quickly reintegrate Britain into this programme, but this has not been the case. Instead, Starmer's government has flatly declined the idea, leaving European officials baffled. A second EU diplomat voiced frustration, remarking that constructive rhetoric is well and good, but without concrete action, little will change. This diplomat emphasised that the UK's unwillingness to rejoin Erasmus, despite the programme's broad support across Europe, has left a sour taste in Brussels. Another major issue adding to the growing tensions is Starmer's refusal to back a youth mobility scheme, which could have been another avenue for rebuilding trust and cooperation with the EU. This programme would have offered affordable visas to 18 to 30-year-olds, allowing them to live and work in EU countries for up to 4 years. Such initiatives could have shown Starmer's commitment to re-establishing strong ties between the UK and Europe. But once again, the answer from his government was a resounding no. Why is Starmer resisting programmes that would seemingly bring the UK closer to the EU? According to sources, he fears that initiatives resembling freedom of movement might provoke backlash from key voters back home, particularly with the growing influence of the anti-immigration Reform UK party. The party's rising popularity has made Starmer wary of making any decisions that could be viewed as pro-immigration or seen as undoing the hardline stance on Brexit. As Starmer presses on with his plans for a UK-EU reset, it's becoming increasingly clear that his diplomatic strategy is running into significant roadblocks. Though he's visited EU capitals like Berlin, Dublin and Paris to drum up support for his agenda, the reception has been lukewarm at best. While these visits initially raised hopes for a fresh start, the atmosphere in Brussels has cooled. European officials, particularly those in Brussels, are reportedly concerned about Starmer's approach. There are rumours that Starmer might be trying to bypass the European Commission altogether by negotiating directly with individual national capitals. If this is indeed his strategy, it's a risky one. EU officials have made it clear that member states have limited influence in shaping trade agreements and other major policies, which remain firmly under the control of the European Commission. One senior EU diplomat described Starmer's rumoured bypassing strategy as completely inaccurate and legally flawed. The diplomat stressed that EU member states have virtually no sway in the negotiations because the Commission holds the mandate to deal with third countries. This suggests that Starmer's efforts may be viewed by Brussels as misguided at best and potentially disastrous at worst. Despite the growing criticism, both Downing Street and Brussels are publicly maintaining a cautiously optimistic stance. The UK government has announced further visits to European capitals in the coming months, indicating that Starmer's team remains committed to improving relations with Europe. However, the question remains, can these diplomatic visits produce real results, or will they simply serve as more PR stunts? The crux of the matter lies in Starmer's unwillingness to engage in concrete policy changes that would demonstrate his commitment to improving UK-EU relations. Without moves like rejoining Erasmus or implementing a youth mobility scheme, it seems unlikely that the UK can truly reset its relationship with Europe. As the stalemate drags on, experts are warning that Starmer risks losing credibility not only with Brussels, but also with the British public. One of the biggest risks for Starmer is appearing weak on the domestic front. With Brexit hardliners still holding considerable influence in British politics, any move that could be seen as softening the UK's stance on immigration or EU cooperation might erode Starmer's support base. The balancing act between satisfying Brussels and keeping his domestic political coalition intact is proving to be more difficult than anticipated. As if the EU reset wasn't enough of a challenge, Starmer is also grappling with a worsening migrant crisis in the English Channel. In a tragic development, French authorities confirmed that at least 8 migrants died while attempting to cross the Channel overnight. The small boat, which had been carrying up to 50 people, capsized near the French coast, marking one of the deadliest incidents in the Channel this year. This latest tragedy highlights the scale of the crisis facing the UK government, which has been under pressure to stem the flow of illegal migration. More than 21,000 people have crossed the Channel so far in 2024, with the death toll now surpassing 30 for the year. Just this month, 12 people, including children and a pregnant woman, died after another boat encountered difficulties near Cap Grisnez, France. Starmer's critics have accused him of failing to act swiftly enough to address the root causes of this crisis. Some argue that his government needs to adopt more stringent policies to discourage these perilous crossings. Meanwhile, French and UK authorities continue to step up patrols, but the migrant flow shows no sign of abating. In another unfortunate development, Starmer's government is facing backlash from veterans and local residents over the mishandling of a war memorial relocation in Wiltshire. The memorial, which honours 102 employees of a local tyre company who died in the World Wars, has been left in a state of disrepair after contractors botched an attempt to move it. The monument now sits abandoned outside a defunct factory, shrouded in orange plastic fencing. Veterans, led by Mike Jackson, a former soldier with the Duke of Edinburgh's Royal Regiment, have expressed their anger at the council's failure to properly care for the monument. Jackson described the situation as disgraceful, especially with Remembrance Sunday fast approaching. He and other veterans are calling for swift action to ensure the memorial is relocated to a dignified site. The local council has promised that the memorial will be moved to Queen Mary Garden until a final location is decided, but critics are not convinced. Many feel that the mishandling of the memorial reflects a broader lack of respect for the sacrifices made by previous generations. Keir Starmer is facing a confluence of challenges that threaten to derail his premiership. From mounting tensions with the EU to the ongoing migrant crisis and domestic missteps like the war memorial debacle, Starmer's leadership is under growing scrutiny. Can he deliver on his promises to reset relations with Europe, or will his plans fall apart? And how will he navigate the thorny issue of immigration, a topic that continues to divide the nation? That's all for today's video. What are your thoughts on Starmer's handling of EU relations? Do you think his government is doing enough to address the migrant crisis? And what about the war memorial controversy? Be sure to leave your comments below, hit the like button, and subscribe for more in-depth coverage of British and global news. Thanks for watching, and until next time.